One of the news items of the past week was the fact that the head of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, Representative Ben Ray Lujan, has indicated that there will be no quote-unquote litmus test regarding abortion rights or access to abortion required in order for candidates to get the party's support in the upcoming congressional elections. Here to discuss that with us now is Jodi Jacobson. Jodi is the editor-in-chief of Rewire, and she is a longtime activist in this area in both health and development and reproductive rights and related issues. So first of all, Jodi, thanks for coming back on the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, we're delighted to have you because it strikes me, my initial reaction when I heard that there won't be a litmus test is what's wrong with litmus tests? It seems to me that, like they say, if you don't stand for anything, you'll fall. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. I don't understand. What's your thought about this?
Well, my thought about it is that it's basically saying that the value of women's fundamental rights and the value of women's primary health care is not a value shared by the Democratic Party. And if that is not a basic value to which they can hold candidates, then I'm not sure what they stand for. This is not what I would call a litmus test in the sense that people use that. If the Democratic Party intends to be an evidence-based party, a fact-based party, a party that focuses on public health, human rights, and equity, then saying that they will not require candidates to adhere to evidence and public health and human rights-based policies as regards women's health is saying that they don't value women. So pretty much that's what it says to me. Women cannot be equal actors in society unless they can control their reproduction, unless they have essential bodily integrity, unless they can make choices about whether, when, and with whom to have a child. And when we talk about this issue, we're really not just talking about abortion, because so many so-called anti-choice Democrats are also against contraception and vote against contraception. For example, Bart Stupak, being a famous example, was not someone who was aggressively for expanding access to contraception. So I really have a problem with this overall, just based on the evidence, the wealth of evidence, and the fact that I thought the Democratic Party was evolving toward being an evidence-based party, but clearly they are not. And clearly they still don't get the fact that women are the people that elect Democrats. Without women, they are not a party. And that particularly women of color, who are even more egregiously affected by lack of access to abortion care, a lack of access to reproductive health care, elect Democrats. For example, in Virginia, Terry McAuliffe would not be in office if not for Black women in Virginia. So I really do not get this step. It's ill-informed. It's strategically unsupportable and really stupid. That's basically what I think.
Yeah, well, tell us what you really think. So, Jodi Jacobson, I feel like there are a couple issues in play here, and in your comments as well. One is a simple matter of values. There are certain things that should not be compromised for tactical reasons, and the rights of half the population or any segment of the population certainly fall into that category, in my opinion. And the other is the fact that they're not only apparently willing to do that, but I think you're also saying it's also tactically stupid, that it's not just morally wrong, but that they're going to lose more than they gain electorally as well. Is that a fair interpretation of what you're saying?
Yeah, there are days that I ask myself whether or not the Democrats are being paid by the Koch brothers to lose, because it sure seems to me that there are times that they take or don't take positions or recruit candidates that are weak on the core issues about which core Democratic constituencies care. And this is one of them. I don't understand it. It's, like I said, strategically and electorally stupid, and it's unprincipled. And I've tried now 3 or 4 times this week to get in touch with Lujan to talk to him about this and get his feedback on it. And pretty much the DCCC comms director has refused to offer me a time to talk to him and just sent me some boilerplate language. But that's really not okay, because if you can't defend and explain the rationale behind a decision like this, which again, the majority of the Democratic voters on which they depend are women, it seems fairly ill-informed, and really it makes me wonder, how much the Democratic Party has examined its own misogyny.
Well, I think that's a very important point, because we've heard several leading Democrats express this opinion about abortion rights, and they've all been men. Since Ben Ray Lujan won't speak to you directly, we can look at his words as he was quoted on this topic. He said, quote, "As we look at candidates across the country, you need to make sure you have candidates that fit the district, that can win in those districts in America." And to me, it seems as if, number one, there's a sort of invisibilization, if that's a word, of women taking place, because I guarantee you there is no congressional district in America that is not roughly 50% made up of women. So clearly he's not perceiving those women when he talks about fitting the district. And it also seems to me it's a kind of a view that says that they don't want to lead on an issue, they want to follow on an issue. So if anti-choice candidates have historically won in a district, then, well, that's what they'll be. So neither of those is admirable to me. But I guess my question, and in a way it's not a fair question to ask, I'm asking it of you as well as myself and all of us, is, well, how do we move this party? Because I agree with you. I think it's tactically foolish. I think it's morally wrong. I think they would do a lot better if they said, yes, we have core values, and one of those core values is that every woman should have the right to decent health care and autonomy over her own body. And we think that if you don't believe that, we may not be the party for you, but we're going to tell you why that's important. And we think that if you do believe that, we want to make sure you get out and vote in 2018, because turnout from the base is so much more important than persuading, imaginary persuadable voters in the middle. So let's tell you what we believe in. Let's make that a cause. Let's get people out to vote for it. I think that's what wins. I suspect it. I know it's what you think wins. But how do we persuade these people to run their party in a different, smarter way? I know nobody has the magic key to that, but what are your thoughts on that?
I've been thinking a lot about this. Now, I'm not an advocate. I'm the editor of a publication, and we're journalists, and we think and comment and work as journalists, and so I can't speak from the vantage point of the advocacy community, which is obviously grappling with this as well. From a personal point of view, as someone that did work in advocacy, I think there needs to be a widespread and rapid response to this from a mass of women throughout the country, because the thing is, it's exactly as you've just described it. Democrats continue to chase the unicorn voter. They continue to dismiss their base, and they continue to lose. Look what happened with Ossoff. He, had a milquetoast campaign. He did not bring out the base. He didn't even invest in voters of color. Why was he running? And, why are we running in districts where leadership and voice and values are what motivate voters, and we continue not to give that to them, and therefore we lose? it's something on which the party should be leaning. I just don't have the answer as to why they're not. I can tell you that I've now heard Lujan and Tom Perez, who I know personally and admire personally, but think he's absolutely wrong and misinformed on this, as well as, people like Joe Manchin from West Virginia, who is on the board of directors of Democrats for Life, which is an organization that lies routinely about abortion care and about contraception. So you've got male Democrats of prominence who think that they should be kowtowing and catering to people who misrepresent evidence, deny people health care, and then still want women and other voters to go out for them. And I think they're going to lose. And therefore, I frankly, here's my real opinion, I really frankly think that women should form their own party. I know the third party thing is like a third rail, but I just really think that it's time for us to give up, that the Democrats are actually going to do anything that's truly progressive. Because as a party, they seem not to be able to lead. And it's not just on abortion care or contraception, but it's on a range of other issues. They lead by press release, but not by action.
Obviously, we all know the debate about third parties and that sort of thing, but you mentioned Jon Ossoff's race in Georgia. Jon Ossoff lost by 9,200 votes, give or take, around 9,000 votes, out of hundreds of thousands of votes cast. And imagine if he had made standing up for reproductive rights, as well as some other core issues. You mentioned voters of color and their economic. There are a number of people with mortgages in that district. There are a number of people with student debt in that district, on and on. It's almost as we could continue lambasting the Democratic Party ad nauseum, I have a feeling. But I guess what I struggle with, since I also write, is in a sense, I feel a certain obligation as a progressive man. I feel like I don't know how to get through. I haven't found the right words. Maybe women do need to organize their own party. I don't know. I mean, I'm concerned about third-party efforts in general, but I don't know how to, I guess my task, and it's a question you can't answer, is how do I persuade more men who are associated with the Democratic Party that this is something that they need to stand up for. I honestly don't know the answer, but I think that between now and 2018, there needs to be a lot more conversation about this. And I think we need to stop seeing things the way even The Hill framed its article, thehill.com, about Ben Ray Lujan and this decision, talking about conservative districts. I think we have to stop talking about conservative districts maybe and start talking about districts where certain values haven't been promoted and certain voting groups, including women, as the largest, have not been sufficiently mobilized.
Yes, and I mean, these things have really, much more far-reaching implications than winning a district. Once you've got enough of a number of so-called anti-choice Democrats in Congress, for example, then you end up with things like the Stupak Amendment in the ACA and the Nelson Amendment in the ACA, which basically obliterated existing insurance coverage for abortion care that women have had forever until the ACA was put into place, and it vanished. Once you have sufficient numbers of anti-choice Democrats in Congress, you don't get the kinds of votes you need for really the needed funding for contraceptive delivery. You have anti-choice Democrats like David Obey who used to, ensure that the budget was full of abstinence-only funding, even though those programs not only don't work, but they're dangerous. They promote dangerous myths. So, these are real lives and real people we're talking about. We're not just talking about whether one district gets won, but actual policies that either get made that are antithetical to public health and don't have any evidence behind them, or even have evidence showing how bad they are, but things that don't get done because you can't, quote unquote, risk the seat of the anti-choice Democrat. So things that progress we don't make. And I you know, I think we've been through this conversation so many times.
Right.
It gets exhausting to feel that the party that is supposed to represent you doesn't really even have a clue about what decisions they're making and what the implications are.
Well, and at the end of the day, you know what, and this is my closing thought on it, is that at the end of the day, that working mother, let's say she's a single mother, let's say she works at a fast food restaurant where her supervisor changes her shift from day to day, so she doesn't even know how to get child care, and she can't afford it when she can get it, and she's finding her reproductive rights and her access to health care being taken away by a Congress that includes Democrats willing to go along with that agenda, and she would have to take 6 hours, maybe miss a shift of work in order to vote, and she asks herself, why bother? What are those people doing for me? Democrats better be prepared to come up with a lot better answer than they have available to them right now. And I guess that's going to be my closing thought on that. We've got about...
That is exactly right.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. But Jodi Jacobson, editor-in-chief of Rewire, keep fighting. And thanks for the work you do. And thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me. So grateful.